trade professionals, welcome to another episode of the Simply Trade News Roundup. My name's Annik and I'm here with Lalo and Andy in this virtual studio. Hi guys, how are you all doing?
Good morning. How are you, Annik?
Doing good, Annik. Thank you. Heard you went and saw some Olympic Games, huh?
I saw one. I saw two, actually. I saw beach volleyball men, which Germany won, which were the semifinals. So, yeah, that. And then the women, which Canada won, semifinals. So that was really fun. Yeah, it was a quick little day trip, but so fun seeing the Olympics. I mean, it was wild.
You know, that it's historic. It's just, you know, being able to see any part of the Olympics when they're on is just so phenomenal, isn't it?
Give you guys a little snippet of the first article and then let's talk about it, or you guys tell me more about it. So the US Treasury Department has named Brad Smith as the acting Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, responsible for overseeing sanctions policies critical to U.S. foreign relations. I'm not quite sure in this together, like what this means for, you know, as a whole for the U.S. Treasury Department. But I do think having, you know, someone acting under this position will probably be more beneficial for the U.S. because that's what we want. We want more organization when it comes to U.S. foreign relations, obviously, and forced labor, which is the ultimate. No, not forced labor. Sorry, sanctions.
Sanctions. Yeah.
I always put them together. I don't know why I put them together, but yeah, sanctions. We're in Russia.
A lot of people do. They, you know, it's almost in the same sentence, but there's definitely two different focuses. But you know, forced labor and then sanctions. So that's why. That's common.
We're talking about sanctions right now, guys. So that's what I'm talking about. So overseeing basically sanctions, foreign relations. Duh. So what does this mean? Like this Brad Smith being acting now as the Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. What does this mean? And, you know, what difference will this make? Will this make a difference? Or, you know, is there any changes moving forward? Or what do people have to look at now with him being in that position?
Brad Smith is somebody that's, he was director of OFAC, or the Office of Foreign Assets and Control. And he's very familiar with this kind of area. That's one thing. Second thing is, I am a firm believer. You know, here comes one of my, what do y'all call them? Andyisms, whatever. Andyism. It's like anything without a head is dead. Anything with two heads or more is a freak. So apparently, this area where we have been putting out sanctions against predominantly right now on Russian oligarchs and folks that are supporting terrorism and all that in different countries and all, has not had an official lead or head, if you will, in this area. Now, it's still, he's in a somewhat temporary role, but at least he's been plugged in there as acting undersecretary. And so that's a good thing, so that he can provide the leadership, ownership of the program and move forward with ensuring that the sanctions that we're putting forward are being enforced. And that's a good thing because, again, the issue of whenever you're using sanctions is you're trying to apply pressure from a financial perspective in this case to get the country to modify behavior that whoever the sanction is against, modify their behavior so that they're going to stop doing the bad actions that they're taking. So I think this is a good thing, gives some direction for the department and whatnot.
I also see that it'll also enforce or reinforce any policies or enforcement of the sanctions, because I'm not going to say the former undersecretary was weak. Obviously, I mean, there's no way you can really say that because of all the sanctions that have been coming down for the last 4 years, maybe. But anyway, with this new change, obviously it'll remain consistent and even enforce it. I guess about the only thing for trade professionals would be the fact that they just try to keep up and trying to either don't think that, okay, now there's a change, maybe things will be a little more chill. Maybe now I can do more business with Russia. That's probably not true, but usually with a change in leadership, there's usually also change in kind of like the way you're going to enforce it. I seriously doubt they'll get rid of any sanctions because that's really not their decision 100%. But as far as enforcement, that might be more of where they come in and should be taking a look at that and making sure that they're staying up to date for that more than anything. So that's really my end on it.
Well, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to go forward and see, if there are any, major changes, or because obviously you don't know until he's in that position and, kind of acts out on his position. But
well,
I like that you said.
You can expect to hear, just to your point there, is that, what actions should we take? Or this is something we should be monitoring and would expect to hear a crackdown within 30, 60, 90 days, probably of with somebody in the leadership, who's doing what and a crackdown on anybody that's not following the sanctions. So,
yeah. I mean, I like that you said it's giving direction. So like, that I think is the perfect way to describe this, not change, but this, him in this position. It's giving direction. So it'll be more focused, possibly. Yeah, so we'll see. But okay, good article. If you want to learn more about it, we have this article on our page. So on LinkedIn, you can check it out. Also, possibly under in the directory, right, Lalo? Okay, perfect. Second article, California, which so in 4 years the games will be in California, the Olympic Games, right? This will be you'll see the beach volleyball on the what is it called on the
real beach.
On the real beach.
On a real beach, yeah. Santa Monica Beach.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yes. We'll see how that turns out. Okay, well, looking forward to that. Power outage, but this is not as good as the Olympics, because power outages at the Port of Los Angeles have brought significant disruptions to operations, with 9 outages recorded in 2024 alone. The reliance on overhead power lines and challenges in the power infrastructure have led to concerns about operational efficiency and reliability. Which it also discusses that the neighboring port of Long Beach, receiving power from a different provider, has experienced fewer interruptions. So basically, this is raising questions about the management of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the LADWP, and infrastructure maintenance practices. Well, I think this is a valid concern. I feel like 9 outages are just too many, like maybe 8 too many. So I like, to what extent is this affecting trade? Because I mean, if there's an outage, there's nothing really what's happening. So packages are being held, ships can't. I don't know what is the extent that companies are.
Well, ships cannot be loaded or unloaded, and it's slowing those kinds of things down. Where anything that is powered by electricity, even at night, you got to have your lights. You've got to have, if you're running forklifts with that are electrical power, if you're running cranes that are electric versus some kind of diesel power or something like that. So there's those kinds of things that come into play. The issue that's interesting in this, though, in the article is, and it's in regarding the port and all, they go back and then make the author of this makes a point to say over 20 years ago, California legislators embarked on energy deregulation. And I find that curious and said that it was implemented haphazardly as far as that concept back then. The governor was Gray Davis, and it was but to me, it was not deregulation. It was more regulation, because what happened is then the government mandated, certain pricing and certain, it's like, oh, there is not enough power. And so they did the rolling blackouts and all those kinds of things that were going on during that. That's more regulation, not deregulating it. And they handcuffed or hamstrung the power grid itself on where, generating power, where it's coming from and all that. So here we are in today's world now. And what's happening? Basically, the power drain on the electrical grid in California has increased. Why? Well, they're mandating more and more and more electrical vehicles and a move away from, petroleum-based engines, such as diesel engines, such as, gasoline engines. Well, here's one of the things. All of that has to generate, you have to have something going. So it's the demand's going on there, and it's pulling power down to the point then that it's affecting, and we hear this all over, but they've isolated specifically the port of Los Angeles, where it's zeroing in and having a negative effect. Folks, the issue here is that they still haven't even hit the state mandated requirements to eliminate diesel powered equipment and switch it over to electric power. So in other words, let's say if you have a big forklift that is a diesel powered engine in it, it's going to have to be converted over to, stop using that and over to a electric power. Well, guess what? It doesn't last as long. It doesn't work as long. It's heavier and all that. And it's going to pull more power away from this. So folks, this is one of those things where you can go with a policy that, quite frankly, is irrational and mandate all this. And it sounds fine, well and good, but the grid can't handle it. So this is just one area of the country, in this case, California. Just, can you imagine if you did this across the country that people are trying to do this in? It's just not going to work. Our electrical grid can't handle it.
All right. Lalo? Anything from your side on this?
No, I mean, just other than I would just to clarify that the ports that are affected, the most affected port was Port of Los Angeles versus Port of Long Beach. Long Beach is actually not affected as badly, which is good because that's a bigger port for one. And secondly, apparently it's managed by a different power company or power group, right? It's managed
by the LADWP.
That's a Port of Los Angeles. The one in San Diego. In Port of Long Beach is by Southern California, something or the other. Anyway. The good news is
you're right. Sorry, I read that wrong. Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, so the good news is that Port of Long Beach is not as affected, but they attribute to the fact that they are more prepared. They have like backup power, like a bunch of batteries, that they use for backup power. And I guess it makes sense because Port of Long Beach has been wanting to be more green, as Andy said, and I guess they've prepared a lot more and they have a lot more of that infrastructure. So when power goes down, they're not as impacted as others. But one interesting thing that I did read which was really interesting, was when there's a power outage, everything needs to be reset. Even if the cranes are not electrical, maybe they're half electrical. Obviously, they're electrical in one way or another, but they're also mechanical or, gas powered in some way or another. But what I found was interesting that everything needs to be reset so that it kind of like when you're restarting your computer, I guess, the settings need to be redone. It's kind of funny. I was reading that and I said, well, what's a big deal? The power goes down. Not that what is a big deal. Of course, we know the power goes down. That is a big deal. But what are the problems behind that? And what I read was that, again, like if the cranes go down, you need to reset them. The gates, the same thing. So trucks are sitting there for a long time waiting for all of this to be reset, even when the power comes back on.
Wow.
So I just thought that was real interesting that I didn't, things that we don't know about. So I guess any takeaways for the trade community is maybe ship from Port of Long Beach versus Port of LA, but anyway.
Revamp your entire compliance process and logistics process because of this.
Yeah.
Tip.
So anyway, that was it.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I mean, it kind of sucks, if that happens so many times and continues to happen, and it does affect your logistics process, supply chain. I don't know. Maybe rerouting would be a good idea, but obviously, not everyone can reroute. So, this problem has to be fixed at the root. So, whoever's dealing with that, they need to, I don't know, fix it. I'm sure it's not that easy as it's said, but. Anyways, we're moving on to a different topic. China. We always got to throw them into our podcast somehow. We love China.
Well, they're second largest economy in the world. They're going to be heavily impacted on things. So, yep.
I know. So this article discusses the implication of China's diminishing demand for metals. So the overproduction of rare earths in China has led to a supply surplus, influencing prices and market sentiment. While this trend poses challenges for U.S. buyers, and we can get into why that is, maybe that is a question I'm going to ask right now, but it also presents opportunities in terms of supply stability and the potential for environmentally beneficial changes in mining practices. So I don't know what your guys' stand on that is. So maybe we can go into that. What are the challenges for you as buyers in this sense? And also, Lalo, you're showing us your screen.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay, no. It's just funny. All right. And what in this sense, it's going into environmental benefits. So let's talk about that. What are you guys' stance? What are we looking at here?
The only thing that I want to comment, and again, I guess I would need to look and research a little more. Obviously, a lot of these stories come to us, and we have little time to prepare. But the one thing that I do want to look at, and maybe we can comment on that later, is just to see if there might be an impact, if any, on the tariffs that are being imposed on steel and aluminum coming into the United States. I don't know if that's going to impact in one way or another. I mean, obviously the sourcing of it is still the same, and there should still be tariffs and duties. But I don't know. My curiosity is to see if that's going to happen. They're clearly stating there is an abundance of metals now, because I see that China is using less of the industrial. There's a less demand for metal in China because of the industrial shift of some sort or the other. So anyway, I just kind of want to probably take a look at that later on and see how that does get impacted.
Well, and it does. And here's the thing is that in this, the article here takes the stance that China has overproduced products using rare earth minerals. And the thing that I'm looking at is that, well, they've not made the adjustment on what's going on. That's one thing. But the other is that I think the main reason is that if there's an overproduction, I guess, of these items in China, is that more and more companies are from all over the world are moving away from China as their, in their supply chain as a source of their products and all that. And so they're using alternatives. And so I think that is what is at the issue here.
All right. Thank you for that. Covered the 3 articles. And, there might be questions that you as a listener have while listening to the show, while we kind of go through some of the questions that I have, or, whatever Lalo and Andy feel like they need to address. But obviously, we're not addressing everything. First of all, there's no time. Second of all, we would have to really get the experts from each possible article to, disclose that. And we cover such a large amount of variety, I would say. So if you do have any questions, please take them to LinkedIn, send us a message or shoot us an email, whatever you feel best, and we can address it. And maybe we can even get someone to cover that specific topic more in depth. So I feel like if you're just listening to it and saying like, oh my God, I'm leaving this podcast with a lot of more questions, do that. And we can help you by answering those, by getting an expert. So we really want to cater to the community, and we hope that you get something out of these news, but still maybe lead with more questions, afterwards, which would also be nice, because then we can have some cool other podcasts. Anyways, I do have a fun fact for you all. I have not forgotten. Our fun fact. So do you guys know the longest international land freight route? Do you guys know?
Land?
The longest what?
From the EU to China.
From where?
The Silk
The
Road,
EU
isn't
to
it?
China. Yeah, the Silk Road, yeah.
Okay, it says here, the longest international land freight route is the Trans-Siberian Railway, connecting Europe and Asia. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know where, hey, on that, do you know where the longest continuous road is in the world?
No.
It's Yonge Street in Toronto, Canada, and it goes from downtown Toronto and can go all the way up to the Arctic.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool. How long is that? How long would you be driving?
That I don't know, but I will say is that was something intriguing.
Probably not hours, probably days. Yeah. Wow.
Hey, listen, I've got something I want to remind everybody or mention to them is that Lalo and I are going to be attending a conference in Detroit on, I believe it's November 7th. It's a Thursday. It's the AIAG. And we're both going to be up there, and I'm going to be the keynote speaker, and Lalo and I are going to have some fun with interacting with the folks during the lunchtime there. And so hopefully it'll be something that now, to be honest, I'm going to be a little nervous on this, but in doing it. But I'm looking forward to. It's the automotive industry's conference, and it'll be a couple of days after the election too. So that'll be interesting on talking about that and seeing what happens and go from there. So,
what date is it specifically?
We'll get to
the election?
The election is the 5th.
Okay.
November 5th. And then the conference is on November 7th. It's a one-day conference, and check the show notes to see how to register. But we've been on a mission to also promote smaller type events like this that are of very focused and specific audience. This is the automotive industry group, of course. And they, just to make everybody aware of that. Everybody knows of the big ones, and so we're trying to also push like these. Soon we'll be announcing something for Canada, which is actually pretty cool.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that we're working on, and so we'll hope to do that. And later this week, you're going to hear about another group that we did an interview. So tune in on Wednesday, hopefully, of this week, where we'll have a show where we're featuring BASC, BASC, which is the Business Alliance for Secure Commerce. They have a conference coming up in September as well in Miami. But anyway, we try to get other conferences, some spreading the love a little.
Hey,
Nice.
the other thing too is just mentioning we are able to go up to this conference too. We've got a sponsor. This is MIC.
MIC Customs.
Yes,
the software company. Yes.
Yes. So MIC Customs, thank you for the sponsorship, and we'll be going up to that Detroit conference. So shout out to them. So Annik, thank you so much for letting me jump on that one.
Yeah, and and you should say that if you know someone or want Lalo and Andy at your conference, reach out to them, talk to them. Maybe you have a sponsor, and they would love to be there. I'm sure if it's the right conference, they would love to be there. Any conference. Anyways, yeah, that's really all we have for you. So we hope that if you are listening to this on Monday, then we hope you have an awesome week. And if, it's later, then I hope you already had a great week. But yeah, so that's it. See you next week, Monday. Lots of good things in store. So keep up with all our social medias because we have lots of crazy announcements happening possibly soon. So yeah, anyways, thank you so much for listening and bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.